Okay, so you know how we like to dive deep into all sorts of interesting and sometimes kind of out there ideas?
Right.
Well, the material you brought in for today
Oh, yeah.
is definitely fitting that description.
For sure.
We're going to be taking a look at this YouTube transcript
Okay.
from a channel called Transcend. And the video is titled, "The Secret Elite Hides the Truth About God from You."
Interesting.
So just from that title alone,
Yeah, you can kind of get a sense.
you can already kind of guess where things might be going.
Right.
But let's, really unpack this and see what they're actually saying.
Absolutely.
So basically, the core argument
Yeah.
of this video seems to be that there's this powerful secret elite group. And they're not necessarily denying that God exists,
Right.
but they're actively trying to hide
Okay.
what they believe is the true nature of God.
Interesting. So it's more about controlling the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
About what God is rather than just saying there is no God.
Right. It's about shaping the understanding of spirituality itself.
That's a different angle.
Yeah. And it's interesting because they're saying that a lot of us have been taught to think of God as this kind of external being.
Okay.
Maybe, way up in the heavens somewhere.
Right. Separate from us.
Exactly. Very distant from our daily lives. But this elite group, they claim to understand and even manipulate what they call invisible forces.
Okay.
By tapping into an inner divinity.
So they're saying that there's this power within.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
And that they know how to access it.
Right.
But they're keeping it hidden from the rest of us.
Exactly. And they're saying this knowledge has been deliberately obscured for centuries.
Okay.
To prevent the masses from realizing their own inherent power.
Wow. That's a pretty big claim.
It is, and it kind of flips the script on the usual conspiracy theories.
How so?
Well, usually it's about denying something exists.
Yeah, like aliens or government cover-ups.
Right. But here it's about admitting something exists, but controlling access to it and redefining it for their own purposes.
So they're saying the elite are basically gatekeepers.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Interesting.
And the transcript even goes so far as to suggest that many established religious doctrines are actually just a distorted version.
Corrupted version.
Right, of this original understanding of inner divinity.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. It is.
So they're saying the religions we know are part of the problem.
Well, that's how they're framing it.
Wow.
They even use this phrase in the video, the God they showed you.
Okay.
Which is this image of a distant, often judgmental figure.
Right. The kind who demands obedience and punishes you if you don't follow the rules.
Exactly.
Very much an external authority figure.
And they contrast that with what they call the true God.
Okay. I'm curious to hear what they say about that.
Well, according to the transcript, it's radically different.
Okay.
It's not an external entity at all.
Oh, so then what is it?
They're saying it's a force.
Okay. A
consciousness that's actually within every single person.
So it's inside us all along.
Yeah, that's the basic premise.
Interesting.
It's in our thoughts, our feelings, our intentions.
That's a very different way of thinking about God.
Yeah, it is. And the implication is that if you can connect with this inner force, you can actually change your experience of reality.
So it's like we have this untapped potential.
Exactly. They're suggesting we have this incredible power within us.
That could transform our lives.
If we only knew how to access.
Makes you wonder why we wouldn't all be doing that.
Right. Well, that's where their whole theory about the elite comes in.
Okay, so what's their explanation for why this knowledge is supposedly being suppressed?
Their argument basically boils down to this.
Yeah.
They say that if everyone realized this inner divinity, the current power structures of society would collapse.
Okay, so they're saying it's a threat to the status quo.
That's their claim.
So like governments, religions, all of that.
Yeah, they specifically mention those.
Would basically become obsolete.
Yeah, because if people believe they hold the key to their own power and their own connection to the divine, then they wouldn't need these external authorities anymore.
They wouldn't need intermediaries or hierarchical systems.
Exactly. It would be a huge shift in how we organize ourselves.
It's a very decentralized world.
Yeah. And they're saying the elite are terrified of that.
Because they would lose their control.
Exactly. They believe the elite's primary source of power is our ignorance about our own potential.
It's a pretty cynical view of how society works.
It is, but that's the core of their argument.
So they're painting this picture of a massive power struggle.
Yeah, between those who know the truth about inner divinity.
And those who are being kept in the dark.
And they even have a name for the strategy the elite are supposedly using.
Okay, what do they call it?
The Great Illusion.
The Great Illusion.
And it's not about getting us to disbelieve in God altogether.
Okay.
It's much more subtle than that.
Oh, so what is it then?
It's convincing us that God is outside of ourselves.
So externalizing the divine.
Exactly.
That's interesting because if you think about it,
Yeah.
a lot of religions do emphasize that separation.
Right, and that's exactly their point.
Okay, so how do they say this illusion is being maintained?
Well, they argue that institutionalized religions have played a major role in perpetuating this externalized view of God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this idea of a creator who's separate from us.
Right up there, watching and judging.
Who demands obedience and requires these intermediaries.
Like priests and prophets.
Yeah, all part of keeping us dependent and disempowered.
So they're saying it's a system of control.
And they even point to a specific historical event.
Oh, which one?
The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD.
Okay, I've heard of that, but I don't know much about it.
Well, the video presents it as this pivotal moment where the early church allegedly formalized the concept of a transcendent father figure God and intentionally suppressed any doctrines that spoke of direct personal access to the divine.
So they're saying this council was a turning point.
Yeah, where the idea of an inner divinity was deliberately pushed aside.
And replaced with this more distant externalized God.
Right. And they claim this really cemented the power of the clergy because now people needed them to interpret God's will and to act as this link between humanity and the divine.
But, the Council of Nicaea is a pretty complex historical.
Oh, for sure.
There were lots of theological debates going on at the time.
Right.
I'm curious about the mainstream historical ending of what happened there and how it compares to this interpretation of, deliberate suppression of inner divinity.
Yeah, that's a great point because the video really focuses on this idea of suppressing alternative spirituals.
Right.
But from what I understand,
Yeah.
the main debates at Nicaea were actually centered on the nature of Christ.
Exactly. There was this big controversy about his divinity in relation to God the Father.
Right. And that's what led to the Nicene Creed, which affirmed that Christ was divine.
Right. So that was the main focus.
And while there were definitely power dynamics within the early church,
there always are.
The specific idea that the council's main goal was to eliminate this belief in inner divinity.
Right.
And establish an external God as the dominant view.
To solidify control.
Yeah, that's not really the consensus among historians.
It's more of a specific interpretation presented in this video.
Yeah, and the transcript also mentions the burning of dissenting texts.
Oh, wow.
As evidence of this suppression. But the historical evidence for that is actually pretty limited.
So it's not as clear-cut as the video makes it sound.
Right.
Okay, so even if we take the council's impact on the idea of inner divinity with a grain of salt, the video doesn't stop there, right?
Oh, no, they go way beyond just religion.
Okay.
They argue that this separation between humanity and the divine is constantly being reinforced through all sorts of societal structure.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, they mention our education systems, the media we consume, and even what they call materialist science.
So they're saying it's a much broader cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just limited to religion.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is. And they're saying that any perspective that highlights the potential of the human mind, the possibility that we have this inherent creative power within us, is often dismissed or even ridiculed in mainstream society.
So they're suggesting there's a deliberate effort to keep us thinking small.
Yeah. That's the idea, and it's all designed to keep us feeling limited.
And dependent on external authorities.
Exactly, because if we believe we're powerless...
then we're more likely to look to others for solutions.
To follow the rules to accept the status quo.
It's a very disempowering worldview.
And they're saying that's exactly what the elite want us to believe.
So while everyone else is being told they're limited, the elite themselves are operating with a completely different understanding. They're using this knowledge of inner divinity.
Right. They're supposedly aware of this hidden power.
And they're actively using it to shape reality for their own benefit.
That's their claim.
So they're saying it's like a secret weapon.
In a way, yeah.
And what do they say the elite are using this power for?
Well, they argue that the elite manipulate our emotions.
Okay.
Specifically, fear and guilt.
Those are powerful emotions.
They are. And the transcript suggests that these negative emotions lower our overall vibration, which makes it harder for us to manifest our desire.
Okay, so this idea of vibration is important to their theory.
Yeah, it's kind of like our energetic state.
Okay.
And they're saying that fear and guilt lower our vibration.
Which makes us easier to control.
Exactly, because when we're in that low vibrational state, we're not thinking clearly.
Right, we're not in our power.
And we're more likely to accept whatever narrative is being presented to us.
To go along with the crowd.
Yeah, and that's why they say the elite use things like news and entertainment.
Oh, okay, so they're saying the media is being used.
Yeah, to keep us in a state of fear and anxiety.
And to bombard us with negative stories.
Which keeps our vibration low and prevents us from realizing our true potential.
It's a pretty bleak view of the world.
It is, but that's the picture they're painting.
So if God isn't this external judgmental figure,
yeah,
what do they say is the true nature of divinity?
Okay, well, they're suggesting that the elite understand God.
Yeah.
Not as a separate being to be worshipped,
okay,
but as this living consciousness that permeates all of existence.
Mm-hmm. So it's more like a universal force.
Yeah, and they're saying it expresses itself through our individual thoughts, emotions, and intentions.
So we're all part of this divine consciousness.
That's the idea. And they're claiming that the real power comes not from submitting to some external authority,
but from mastering your own mind.
Exactly.
Learning to direct your thoughts and harness this creative energy within you.
Which is very similar to concepts you find in Hermeticism.
Oh, right. They mentioned that in the video.
Yeah. And one of the key principles of Hermeticism is
the idea that the all is mind.
Exactly.
Which means that everything originates from a universal consciousness.
And they even tie this into modern physics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they reference the observer theory in quantum mechanics.
Okay, I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Well, it's this idea that the act of observing a quantum system can actually influence its state.
So the observer is not really separate from the observed.
Right, and they're suggesting that our consciousness, our thoughts and intentions are not passive, but actually actively participate in shaping our reality.
So it's like our minds are creating the world around us.
Yeah, they're drawing a parallel between the quantum world and our everyday experience.
But that's a pretty big leap.
It is, and it's important to note that this is more of a philosophical interpretation than a scientifically proven fact.
Right, because the observer effect in quantum mechanics is still a very complex phenomenon with lots of debate about what it really means.
Absolutely.
So using it as proof of conscious creation is a bit of a stretch.
It is, but the point they're trying to make is that our thoughts and feelings have a real impact on our lives.
And that we might have more power to shape our reality
than we realize.
Okay, I can see how that ties into their overall argument.
Yeah, and this brings us back to their claim about lowering vibration.
Right, because if our thoughts and emotions are so powerful, then controlling them would be a very effective way to manipulate.
And that's why they see the elite use things like news and entertainment.
To keep us in a state of fear.
And anxiety.
And to bombard us with negative stories.
Because that keeps our vibration low and prevents us from realizing our true potential.
It's a pretty disturbing thought.
It is. And it's all about preventing what they call an awakening.
Oh, right. They keep mentioning that.
Yeah. So what exactly do they say happens when someone awakens?
Well, according to the transcript, it's a pretty profound shift. People start to see through the illusions that have been keeping them trapped. They become aware of their own power.
And they start to understand that their thoughts and emotions are actually creating their reality.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to question the status quo.
They become more independent, more self-reliant.
And that's why the elite are supposedly so afraid of this awakening.
Because it would mean a loss of control for them.
People would start to think for themselves.
To make their own choices, to create their own reality.
It would be a huge disruption to the established power structures.
Exactly. And so the question becomes, if this power is already within us, why aren't more people using it? Well, the video outlines 3 main barriers that the system has supposedly put in place.
Okay, what are they?
The first is what they call mental programming.
Mental programming.
Which are these ingrained limiting beliefs and negative self-talk.
Oh, okay. The stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah, like life is a struggle or money is the root of all evil.
Yeah, we hear those kinds of things all the time.
And they become part of our subconscious.
So we don't even question them.
And that's exactly how they become so powerful.
Because they're operating beneath our awareness.
Right, and they're constantly reinforcing this idea that we're limited.
That we can't achieve our dream.
That we're not good enough.
Yeah, all that negative self-talk.
And the second barrier is emotional manipulation.
Okay, so that's building on the idea of lowering our vibration.
Exactly. It's about keeping us in a constant state of fear and anxiety.
By bombarding us with negative news.
Sensationalized stories.
Political drama.
All designed to keep us feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
And when we're in that state, we're less likely to focus on our own inner growth and empowerment.
Right, we're too busy reacting to the external chaos.
And the third barrier is what they call spiritual disconnection.
And this is where their argument gets a little more controversial.
Okay, how so?
Well, they're suggesting that traditional religion, by establishing intermediaries like priests and rigid dogmas, actually create a sense of unworthiness.
So they're saying it's about making us feel separate from the divine.
Yeah, and that we need these external authorities to connect with God.
Which reinforces this dependence on the system.
Exactly. And it prevents us from recognizing our own direct and personal connection to the divine.
It's a pretty bold claim.
It is. And they even go on to say that while the general population is being taught to fear and dismiss this idea of inner power, the elite themselves are actively using it.
Oh, so they're saying it's like a double standard?
Yeah, they're claiming that the elite are using this knowledge through symbols, rituals, or archetype to influence reality for their own benefit.
So they're playing by a different set of rules.
That's the accusation.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, maybe there's something to this. What can I do about it?
Yeah, how do you turn the game around? Well, the video actually outlines a few steps.
Okay, I'm curious to hear what they suggest.
The first step, they call deconstructing the illusion.
Deconstruct.
And it basically involves questioning everything you've been taught about your limitations, about who holds power.
So it's about becoming more critical of the narratives we're given.
Exactly. Don't just passively accept things.
Question everything.
Ask yourself why things are the way they are.
Who benefits from us believing certain things?
Right. It's about waking up to the possibility that things could be different.
That we might have more power than we realize.
And the second step is reprogramming your mind.
Reprogramming the mind. Okay.
Yeah, so this is about making a conscious effort to choose your thoughts, to become aware of the stories you're telling yourself.
And to replace negative thoughts with positive.
Exactly, because they're saying that your thoughts create your reality.
So if you want to change your life, you have to start by changing your thinking.
And the third step is activating your connection with universal consciousness.
Activating your connection. Okay.
And they're not talking about joining a specific religion or following a guru.
Okay.
It's more about practices like mindfulness and meditation.
Oh, okay. Things that help you connect with your inner self.
Yeah, and they're saying that when you do that, you start to tap into this universal creative energy.
Which is the source of all power.
And the final step they suggest is to act as if you already have this power.
Act as if.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if you don't fully believe it yet, start acting like you're already the master of your own reality.
So fake it till you make it.
Kinda.
Yeah.
It's about projecting confidence and certainty.
And that will start to shift your reality.
That's the idea.
It's an interesting approach.
And the video ends with this really powerful message.
Okay, what do they say?
They're saying that despite all the manipulation and control, the core essence of divinity within each of us remains untouched.
So they're saying we can't lose our connection to the divine.
No matter what the elite try to do.
That's a hopeful thought.
It is, and they remind us that God isn't some distant authority figure.
But the very consciousness that resides within us.
Waiting to be acknowledged.
And they even share a quote inspired by Rumi.
Yeah.
You spent your life searching for something outside.
But the search ends when you understand that what you seek has always been what you are.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's a powerful reminder that everything we need is already within.
So this video is basically saying that we've been lied to about the nature of reality.
About our own power.
And about the true nature of God.
And that it's time to wake up.
Deconstruct the illusion.
And to reclaim our divine inheritance.
It's a pretty radical message.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering.
Because it's saying that we have the ability to change things.
To create a better world for ourselves and for everyone.
And it all starts with recognizing our own inner divinity.
Exactly.
So as you're listening to all of this,
what are some of the things that stand out to you?
What resonates with you?
What makes you question your own beliefs?
And if this idea of inner divinity speaks to you, what's one small step you could take today to explore it further?
To connect with that power within you.
This deep dive is really just the beginning.
The starting point of your own personal journey.
And it's up to you to decide where it leads.